So welcome everybody. Today is October 19th. This is CALPADS Q A. My name is Alex Manriquez and I'm a data analyst at CSIS supporting CALPADS. And driving for us today is Mr. Gary Gerwer. For announcements, we don't really have a lot going on other than just Fall 1 deadline is, the initial deadline is December 16th, just as Gary has it up on the screen. The initial deadline does not require SELPA approval, but make sure that you have all your ducks in a row to have the LEA approval by December 16th. And then other than that, just training is still ongoing. So if you feel like you haven't gotten a chance to, sign up for training, please make sure that you're looking at the bridge, making sure that you sign up for any remaining trainings. And if you aren't able to, for whatever reason, we always have the recordings up in our YouTube channel. And that's where Gary's showing you right now how to get to our CSIS YouTube channel for our recordings. With that, I'm going to pass it on to Angela, Martha, or any CDE folk that have any announcements. And question 1 from Jamie from Molina says, can you please do an example on how one would use assignment code of 6029? All right, so Gary is taking us to the CALPADS code sets and filtering for 6029, non-classroom based or support assignment of special education case manager. So that's one of the new ones that just got created for this school year.
So this is special education staff within your districts or schools that are not instructing students at all. They're not providing special education instruction. They are solely managing IEPs. I mean, the key here, folks, is that they're not instructing students.
And you can use this with a job class of 12?
I'd have to look at the valid code combos. I believe you can.
So Jamie, if you go to our valid code combinations, oh, and Gary has it up and ready. Non-classroom support assignment and job class tab will give you all available job class that you can associate with that non-class support assignment. There you go. Thanks, Gary. All right, Carol. Mama Carol, question 1. Why am I getting a fatal Fall 1 error for a student I don't own on census day? Attended 3 days in August, TX'd to a charter school or transferred to a charter school, but charter school didn't upload SINF and Cert 4 error says it's my problem.
Is that our new bug when things get merged?
We've been seeing a lot of Cert 004s for the SINF records, seeing some weirdness in there. We've been spending a lot of time correcting errors. And some of them I wasn't even able to correct. I've had to send one to our database specialist to delete on the back end because it's weird. The SINF record is showing ownership of a specific LEA, but those students weren't even at that LEA during those time periods, and it's like going back several years. So maybe it was from a mid-merge.
Yeah, it's happening because of mid-merges.
Yeah,
Gary, and we do know that. So I believe Angela logged a bug this morning. But so what's happening now that wasn't happening in previous years is when you go in to delete, and usually it's one of the Stub SINFs that's created when you obtain a new SSID, and you've merged the data. If you are not the LEA that submitted that Stub SINF, then you're prevented from deleting it because it has a reporting LEA of another LEA. Whereas in previous years, before file submission, post redesign, as long as your enrollment fell within the periods, or the SINF effective dates fell within the periods of enrollment, you could modify that record. But right now it's not allowing that. So we've submitted it as a bug. We'll see what the technical team says.
I think in this case, though, Carol is questioning you know, she can see that the SINF is missing data, but it's not her SINF. It's
Right.
the charter school that the student transferred to, which is
Right.
slightly different than the other bug, isn't it? That you just
I don't
spoke
think
to.
so.
Mm.
I don't think it's different. So it's all about that ownership.
Okay.
Yes.
But I
That's
think-
what it is. It's about the
Yeah.
ownership of the SINF.
I think what's interesting about this one, though, is that the student wasn't enrolled with her LEA on census day, but she's still getting the cert error.
I know in some cases I've opened up the SINF record and you'll see the LEA will be, even though it wasn't, the student wasn't there, they'll show as the owner of that record, even though it should be the other LEA.
So I think, Carol, bottom line is we got some defects around that cert form.
Yeah.
We're not quite sure why you're getting it, but you know, if you can remove it, great. Otherwise, if you're having difficulties with resolving it, send in a ticket and we'll see what we can do to help you.
Okie dokie. Ethan says, congrats, Joanne. Claudia, question 1. For the new non-classroom based assignment, 6028, 6029, 6030, do we need to also create a section for those teachers?
Those are non-classroom based assignments, I believe.
So you don't create courses for them, a section.
Denise from Palo Alto says, what SENR exit status should be used when an 11th grader was promoted to 12th grade in September this year after being in 11th grade for less than a month? I used E150, but CalPADS flagged it ERD.
You have to make sure the data is
is
sequential, right? That if you use a E150, the next record should have a day right after the exit of the E150. Even if it's the weekend, it has to be the day right after.
The comment right below that from Robin, it's saying there's a known issue that causes ERD to trigger on valid E150 exits.
Okay.
So, thanks, Robin. Laura from Santa Rosa City Schools, question 1. When reporting a section that is co-taught for students with disabilities and gen ed students, we are reporting both teachers. The gen ed teacher is the primary teacher and the SPED teacher is secondary. Do we mark it multi-teacher instructional strategy 700? Will having the SPED teacher in the section not cause a misassignment? We want to make sure we are correctly reporting the sections as they are being taught. That is not the way you should be reporting it. And I know we have an FAQ on that. So there's a special state course code. I don't know off the top of my head.
9231.
There you go, 9231, where the special education teacher should have his or her own separate section, where that section is tagged with an instructional strategy code of 700, but they should not be in as a co-teaching or job sharing in the same section as a gen ed teacher. Anything else you want to add to that, Brandy?
If everybody could bookmark this specific FAQ, that would be amazing. So yeah, if in the FAQs, if you go to the fall 2 data in the staff and see data section, there is a question right there. And how should we report assignments for staff serving students with disabilities in special education? If everybody can bookmark that FAQ, that will answer all your questions. It tells you exactly how you should report those staff.
All right, moving on to Janet, question 1. Is there a report in CalPADS that allows us to see new enrollments? I'd like to see new enrollments from the last month. Thank you. The only thing that comes to mind is the SSID extract.
Yeah.
It will bring up everybody that was enrolled during that month, but you can use the
Could then filter on start dates for that given month.
That's true. The start date is in the SSID extract.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So Gary's showing you on the screen, Janet, if you go to extracts and CalPADS, and then there's the SSID extract right in the middle of there, of those tabs, and you can filter or generate your extract. and filter on that enrollment start date.
But I think the key here, Alex, what you mentioned is that this extract's going to get you all of the kids. And so then you have to take us the next step, and then you have to manipulate the file and search for students that have a start date in that particular time frame that you're looking for.
Just take it and put it into Excel and turn the filters on, and you'll see when you filter on the dates, it'll do 2021, 21, 22. So it's pretty easy to drill down to specific dates that you want.
Denise from Palo Alto, question 1. Is there a known issue with SPRG 70 for LIP 305?
That's your second question.
I think the first one was just the FYI, or
Anyway.
oh no, you're right. It is the second one. It tricked me.
No issues listed anyways.
All right. Got a freebie, Denise. But if you're having issues, go ahead and send in a ticket and we'll take a look at it. Olivia from LeGrand Union. Question 1. I was recently going over Flash 241 and I came across a section saying LEAs that approve their Fall 1 submission by this deadline will benefit from the use of their approved 2022 Fall 1 data in calculating their first principal apportionment P1. My question is, how will Fall 1 data help me calculate P1? Well, the data is extracted, right? The data that you LEA approve as of the initial certification is what's being extracted to do the calculation for you.
So there's P1 apportionment and then there's the P1 attendance, isn't that, Brandy? Aren't there two different kinds of P1s?
No, it's the same thing.
Okay.
So the P1 apportionment includes average daily attendance, which we don't collect in CALPADS. And it also includes data that's needed for the unduplicated pupil count to identify students eligible for supplemental and concentration grant funding. So the supplemental and concentration grant piece and the unduplicated pupil count and percentage come from reports 1.17, data you're certifying in 1.17 and 1.18. But ADA is in the principal apportionment data collection. So it's ADA and LCFF supplemental and concentration grant funding.
So typically it's CDE that makes that calculation. Correct. And you guys just make sure it's accurate.
Yes.
Rebecca from Lancaster, question 1. Is there any more talk about omitting the SINF Stub from our SENR upload? Our SIS vendor PowerSchool has added an option to our SINF extract. However, it does not solve the issue that we get fatal errors for those students who we do not have their registrations completed yet to gather the required SINF fields. Each time we send up our SENR file, I get more new fatal errors for missing required SINF fields.
CALPADS doesn't require a SINF stub. If we send up an SENR, it creates a stub if there isn't an existing one for that SSID. Isn't that how it works?
During the SSID request process?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It doesn't do the stub if it's an existing SSID.
Yeah. So maybe Rebecca, it's working with your SIS vendor, and when you create the SENR, have the flexibility so you don't have to submit a SINF.
Okay, Rebecca Valdez, question 1. What should the exit dates for the migrant program be when the program ends during the summer?
It has to be within your enrollment period.
The last day of school, potentially.
Yeah.
That's a good question. I had that exact same question in a ticket, and they were wanting to exit them in July, even though their enrollment ended in June, and they were getting an error. And they don't really have to exit them. I explained in the ticket, and
right.
Yeah. And if they're going to re-sign, if they go to a new LEA and they're still within the 3 years, then they can use the original start date. But if that's ended and they're re-upping for another 3 years, and then they can see from the previous record in CALPADS from the previous LEA when that 3 years was up, and then when they can start their new 3 years if they want.
Right. And again, and I think we talked about this in the last Q&A. I know that you guys like to enter start and end dates for migrant programs based on that 3-year qualifying period. And I get that, but it creates these issues when those kids leave your LEAs. And potentially when they come back, right? It creates issues. So providing a program record with a start date and no end date is okay. And like Gary said, with migrant program records, you're not required to exit those program records when they transfer to another school or when they transfer to another LEA. If the student has another qualifying eligibility date, then that LEA could submit that new date, or it could submit the other date. But future dating migrant exits it's problematic for these reasons, because sometimes it doesn't fall within the enrollment period.
Nathan, question 1. I have reached out to CALPADS using a direct email over the past month, and I have an email with CALPADS support that I sent last Wednesday morning, both of which have gone unanswered. I have questions about my mid section, the fact that my recent SPRG exit data now has over 1,000 errors, et cetera, et cetera. This is my first year. I'm 4 months into this position. What do I have to do to get 15 minutes to talk with someone?
Oh, I only found your most recent ticket, Nathan, and it's assigned to CDE level 2 because you were asking about foster students without birth certificates. But in terms of if you just need a support call, we'll have your CSIS agent give you a call.
And if you're sending it to the CALPADS support service desk, it has to be CALPADS-support. If you just send it to CALPADS, I don't think that gets tracked in a system at all, does it, Brandy?
If what gets tracked is,
If the email is sent to just strictly CALPADS at cde.ca.gov, do you guys put that in a
No.
application?
No,
So,
not as far as I know. It may be in Zendesk, but I've never seen it.
yeah.
No, it's not tracked anywhere. This is Paula. I mean, it's not tracked. We receive them, but we don't track them.
So if you want it logged as a service ticket, you have to send it to CALPADS-support at cde.ca.gov.
Okay, Catherine from Fowler Unified, question 1. I'm showing the past CALPADS coordinator on my mids. How do we change this for it to show me as a contact person? Thank you. So if you send us a ticket, we want to make sure that we have our internal system updated with your information. Oh, and Gary's actually showing us how to also a different way to submit the ticket. And Nathan, if you're unfamiliar with this, the way that he got there was through CALPADS. On the navigation bar underneath help, there's service requests. So you can just click on that and it'll automatically populate the your information and less stuff for you to, it's direct to our service desk. But Catherine, if you want to go ahead and submit a ticket and let us know your LEA and that you, your information, your email, your phone number, and who you're replacing so that we can get our information updated in our system, then that'll reflect in our CSIS context.
I think she's asking a different question though, Alex, because she's saying the coordinator showing up on her mids, which is inside of CALPADS itself. And
That's
so
right.
that comes from a role that's assigned. And so when I ran it for Fowler, I see 3 people with the anomaly contact role. So you'll want to go to user management, Catherine, and edit that person's account to remove anomaly contact.
Thanks, Angela. Forgot about that. Larnie from Oxnard Union, question 1. For students with disabilities that are enrolled in either private school or district level, do they count into our cohort? So if they are dropped because they are no longer eligible for services or no longer wants the services, do they count against us as dropout during the cohort reporting? So for private school, they wouldn't, right? Because they're an enrollment status of 50. For the district level, if they would have a primary enrollment. If they're 9th grade through 12th grade, then they would.
But depending on how they exit, don't we remove some students from the cohort based on their exit?
Yeah, I mean, they would have to meet the criteria for being in the cohort, but if the answer is, are they counted in the district level cohort? And on the dashboard, the answer is yes. If you've got a district level enrollment, however, that student will not be represented at a specific school. They'll only be represented in the district level grad rate.
Carolyn, question 1. I'm getting an IVR 106 for a valid SEID when I upload SDEM. Is that a known issue? What is the STFC table? I know, Gary, you were working on this one, right?
Yeah, and Brandy, I sent you an email a little while ago asking about this, but we're seeing a lot of these errors on what apparently are valid SEIDs. And I thought these were like new teachers getting new SEIDs where they've checked with CCTC and then they say, no, it's a good number, but it's coming up with this error as an invalid SEID. But then I got another ticket. The lady said that some were not new SEIDs, that they were older ones. So there may be a bug, but also I wanted to ask you, is there a table that needs to be updated?
Yeah, I mean, there is a table that I'm not sure how often it is updated by CTC. There's a table that we get with the SEID number. So I would log a bug because I do know that there was another issue with regard to CTC retiring some SEIDs, but so, you know, might be intermingled a little bit. But if the LEAs are contacting CTC and they're saying, yeah, that's the right SEID, then there's probably a problem with the table.
Okie doke.
So bug coming soon, Carolyn. Next, we have Kim Gavin. Question 1. I've been on vacation. Any updates or changes on timeline for CDDs? Not to my knowledge, right? Flash 241 is still.
Yep.
Right. I mean, we're hoping that the first bunch for SENR, SINF, and SPRG come in next Tuesday, right, Martha?
Yeah.
And then followed hopefully by November 1st, maybe November 8th for the SPED and SSRV ones.
They all got to pass testing, and that's where we're at with them right now, testing them as a group. We don't want to incrementally add them one at a time, so we're trying to get a group of them done, tested, and then share them out with you guys.
Michelle, question 1. Is there an approximate date when job names submitted via OM will include the local ID and SSID?
Is that
It is
getting close, Angela?
My dream.
I know, me too. Me and Alex are like.
God, that would be nice.
Unfortunately, it keeps getting bumped. So I can ask again tomorrow to see where he's at with that. But yeah, it's been in the backlog for a long time and on the list of things to get worked on, but it just hasn't made the cut yet.
Maybe after we get these CDDs out of the way.
Cedric, question 1. On average, how long does it take for TOMS to score the initial ELPAC? I know that it takes 24 to 48 hours for the status to get into CALPADS, but would all the statuses from the ELPAC taken on or prior to census day be in by now? I'd like to know our final TBD count. All I know is that.
Go ahead, Alex.
I was just going to say, all I know is that the student needs to complete all 4 domains of the initial ELPAC in order for TOMS to say, okay, let's send the status to CALPADS.
Yeah, and that's true. So once they complete all 4 domains, those statuses get sent overnight, right? The problem is if you're seeing that, you know, the students completed all 4 domains, there was a test result, but that status by the next day is not being reflected in CALPADS, it means that there could potentially be an issue with the data in CALPADS already. And so the most frequent things I see, folks, are you guys are deleting the TBD records, or the TBD record is after the test date, right? Or the primary language has been changed to something other than, or it's been changed to English or sign language, or you've deleted those TBDs and you've replaced them with English only records. So anytime that happens, it will not allow that record from TOMS to come in. So if you're seeing a delay of more than 1 day, because again, those records get sent every day, then there's probably an issue, and send in a ticket, put my name on it, and we'll look into it.
Eric, question 1. What is the guidance on working on Fall 1 Cert 164 for NSLP records that did not auto-close on valid enrollment exit? Should we manually close them or leave alone until you resolve the issue at your end?
We're hoping to have a fix for that one on Tuesday. So I would say that wait for the fix.
Amanda, question 1. When will the data discrepancy function be launched? Will it give us access to cert errors year-round? I'm trying to figure out the best way to identify the SINF Stub records, and having access to the errors year-round would be helpful.
The data discrepancy functionality, the idea is to launch it after Fall 2 potentially, but that's just an estimate right now. But when that functionality is launched, it will only show the data discrepancies. It won't show the certification validation errors, because it needs a submission to occur for that to happen, because during a submission, certain data are pulled in and the CVRs are run against that. So it'll just be the data discrepancies that would show up when you're not in a submission.
Per Carol's question 1, she had the same experience and the other district called, and I wasn't able to remove it either. So that's on the Cert 4s. So I think we're looking into a potential bug on those. Terry's talking to Carol, and Denise says, yes, the next SENR start date is right after the previous E150. But I think that we figured that was a known issue, right? Robin mentioned that's a known issue on the ERDs. At 3:13 timestamp, Gary posted the link to that FAQ that Brandy is for the how to report teachers that are have special education assignments. Hope, question 1, CALSASS, getting exceptions for CRSE records that did have a T5 local assignment indicator. County office is telling my HR that this is a CALPADS error due to missing the local assignment indicator, but it was in place.
Was it in the snapshot?
Yeah, I mean, there's a difference between the local assignment option being in place versus it being populated on the course section record for the teacher, right? So you can have a local assignment option in place locally, right? The teacher was appropriately assigned, but you didn't populate it in CALPADS on that section. And so therefore it generates an exception in CALSASS because the teacher's not authorized based on their credential alone to teach that course, right? There's a local assignment option. So there's nothing you can do to fix it for last year, which is the monitoring you're going through. But for next year, and again, most local assignment options have to be renewed annually. So make sure that teacher, I mean, it's a little late now because information day was on the 5th, but that local assignment option should have been in place. And moreover, it should be noted in your course section in your student information system.
All right, at the 3:13 timestamp, Karen posted 2 links. The first one is to the Fall 2 roadmap guide that's in our user manual. And the second link is within that Fall 2 roadmap, we have a section for how to report special education assignments. And that FAQ and other good stuff is in our user manual as well. So you can check that out too. Deborah, question 1. Any ETA on when issue 6373 will be fixed? 63, oh, that's the Cert 164.
Yeah, we're hoping for Tuesday. No guarantees though.
Catherine saying that you can search by enrollment with dates and select school as well. I think that's on the SSID extract. And then he says, sorry, I cheated with my question 1. All right. Judy from Fresno COE, question 1. Any news on having to report all services for students with disabilities? Will attendance records be enough for SAI?
I think they're talking about the IEP implementation collection, and that's completely outside of CALPADS. Joe, do you have any information on that? Or Chris?
Yeah, so the statewide IEP implementation survey statewide would happen next year, but that is a three-part categorical question that's going to be surveyed throughout all the districts. Again, we will course through the information as we roll it out, and through your SELPA directors, through your SELPA.
Okay, Alex from Little Lake, question 1. What is the rule for submitting the LIP program 305 for students? New record yearly? Is the program school grade specific? If a student moves schools or grades, do I need to close one program and open another at the new school? Thanks. Gary has up for us the data guide. And I don't know. Oh, page 177 has information on LIP, how to submit it. And then there's that other section where we have whether or not we can close it. There we go. That's on page 56 of the data guide. And so that last column there that Gary has highlighted answers the question of whether or not these records should be closed annually. And for students that are exiting the school, if they should be closed out or not. So it doesn't seem like it's required. And definitely not for grade level. Natasha's saying that regarding the stub, they're asking that a stub not be created. So when the SSID is requested, that a stub SINF record is not created in that process.
That's part of the design that I don't think at this point that will ever go away till they totally redesign SSIDs.
Rebecca says, got it. Thanks. Cedric, I have written down your question 2. We'll circle back. Sarah, question 1. What report from CALPADS gives me student count for ELOP?
Expanded learning opportunities.
Oh, expanded learning opportunities.
Yeah, this is it's not something that's collected in CALPADS. It's done through the principal apportionment office. So if you have questions about this, you want to talk to the PACE office, and I'll drop that email in the chat.
So it has
I
nothing to do with ELs. It's just enrichment programs after
right.
school.
It has to do with during the pandemic, you know, certain kids kind of got left behind, and if they had certain achievement levels that weren't up to snuff or something like that, they got funding to support those students. And I know they tried to see if CALPADS had data for that, but we don't because it's pretty complicated.
Learned something new. Dana, question 1. Who is my CSIS agent? We need to know what LEA you represent, and then we can definitely look that up for you and let you know. And then Marshall at the 322 timestamp posted the...
Yeah, that's a link. Yeah, it's a link to what Bernie was talking about, migrant. And below that, you'll see the document with the table of contents where you can click on it and go and listen to what she said last week about the migrants.
Awesome. Thank you, Marshall. Chris, question 1. For the SPRG0135, yes, we are not required to have an end date until it has been 3 years. Then we get Cert 110, invalid open or closed Title I Part C migrant record. So eventually we will need to end date it.
I would
That is
use
true.
the exit date of that year, that their 3 years are up, the last day of school.
So instead, question 1, I got a call asking me to verify an SSID for a student trying to register for CalKids. Just curious, where does CalKids pull data from? I went to the CalKids website and see that SSID is one of the data elements required.
They get it
Right.
from us.
The CalKit, what we provide the treasurer's office who runs that program is basically the fall one certified data. So any student who meets the eligibility criteria and were enrolled on census day would be on that list. And they basically, the student would look up, use their SSID, and theoretically CalKids has that SSID. And so then they're able to create an account. We realized that sometimes for SSIDs that are retired, it's not going to work. And so we're working with the CalKids folks right now to get them retired SSIDs so they can keep updating their information. But I do know that some folks have figured it out by actually using a prior they try to use a different SSID that they might have had at a different LEA or something like that. But bottom line is that it comes from the fall one. And it's basically your 1.17 report because CalKids uses the LCFF definition of for unduplicated students.
All right, Rebecca has a follow-up for her question 1, says, based on what Martha and Brandy or Alex agreed to regarding the SINF Stub, then if I'm understanding you correctly, you said that CalPADS is creating the SINF Stub when it's a new student with new SSID. If so, it's still CalPADS doing this, not our SENR file going up, which would not be something our SIS vendor could help us with, correct? It's something that CalPADS has to stop doing, correct? Sort of. The idea is, so you're right in that when you submit your SENR to request the SSID, CalPADS is doing that Stub SINF for you based on that SENR SSID request. The idea, though, is that you would then follow up with the SINF file submission, and then that SINF would populate all those fields that are missing.
I think the issue sometimes is that if their SINF file have an effective start date that doesn't match the start date in that enrollment, then that's when you create that that stub record that hasn't been populated with all of the good stuff that you submitted with your SINF.
So instead of populating the existing one, it just creates a new one, and that stub record still has the fields missing.
And I think why it has become problematic is with the way we're doing SSID now. It just wasn't taken into account the proper way of, I think, creating that stub record. So it causes extra problems. So we're trying to get it under control.
Chris from Twin Rivers Unified, question 1. Can we ask a CSIS agent to contact another LEA? We're seeing MIDs generated by a charter program that doesn't appear to be searching for SSIDs before assigning a new one or resolving MIDs after the fact. I can email them and ask them to resolve MIDs, but seems like they need training on the new SSID process.
Yeah, I think you can send in a ticket and let us know that somebody's appears to be having difficulties, and we can reach out to them. That's helpful.
Claudia has a question too, but then says Angela answered her question too. So skipping that. And Janet, I wrote down your question too, and we'll circle back. Susan, question 1. What is an anomaly contact? Can you restate the information about anomaly contacts you covered a few minutes ago? And I believe that was Angela. So when you're in your anomalies page and you're resolving a MID or a CCE, you have contact information from the other LEA, so you know who you can reach out to. And the information that's listed there is based off of the user roles that you assign to your accounts in CalPADS. And the role is that anomaly contact that Gary has highlighted there. So whoever has an anomaly contact will appear as an anomaly contact under the anomalies page. So if you don't want someone there, or you do want someone there, you should come and whoever has LEA admin role has to make those updates to the user accounts.
And so that's for inside of CalPADS in the application. But if it's the outside list, that's different.
And by outside list, we have our CSIS website.
Yeah, that's what I meant. And a lot of people use that to say, oh, this is the contact for anomalies. And
Yeah.
it's not always up to date.
And Susan, I did put a link to the documentation on that at the 3:35 time stamp.
Carol has a comment too, says, found out the hard way that when an LEA removes their enrollment from an SSID, unless SINF, SPRG, etc. records are removed, it causes problems. I think Martha referred to these as orphan records. I've been talking to other LEAs and it doesn't seem to be common knowledge. And that's true. The rule of thumb, in my opinion, should be that whenever you're trying to remove an SENR record, you start from the bottom up always, so that you're removing any corresponding SPRG, SINF records.
Course, anything.
Yeah, from the bottom up, so that the last record that you're deleting is that enrollment record, because that enrollment record is going to give you ownership to edit or remove anything else. So if you remove the enrollment first, then everything else is kind of locked in, and you lose the ability to make any edits. Danielle from Ramona, question 1. Any ETA on when we will be able to pull an ODS version of staff assignments 4.3? And this is PM 6082. Says, I am aware that this is a fall 2 report, but since the HR department is outside of student services, I need to work both submissions simultaneously. Thank you. I'm so glad that you're doing that, Danielle. But
So good news on that one. Looks like it's in testing now, so it looks like it's on track for the Tuesday release.
Okay. Hope is saying, Brandy, the local assignment option was populated.
So sometimes it will generate, depending on the way the CalSASS logic works, sometimes what they want the monitoring authority to do is verify that the local assignment option was effective on census day. And so it is possible that even though you populated the LAO, that they still want the MA to review whether or not the LAO was effective on census day. And if it was, they just say appropriately assigned.
At the 3:35 timestamp, Angela posted the link to our documentation on roles. Take a look at that. Ethan's question 1 says, sorry, I missed the earlier answer to this. When can we expect Fall 1 CDDs or any other sort of error that would prevent certification that's not currently enabled to turn on? And that is still what was laid out in Flash 241, I believe, where we're doing it in chunks. SENR, SPRG, CELA, SINF will be released in a batch by next Tuesday.
We're hoping, if it all passed testing.
And SPED and SSRB CDDs will be released in early November. That's the timeline.
You're right, either the 1st or the 8th. We're hoping for the 1st, but some might get rolled over to the 8th.
At 3:37 timestamp, Karen posted a link to LIP reporting, and this is from our user manual. If you haven't saved, bookmarked our user manual, highly suggest you do that. Most of our answers are somewhere in there. I think our next question is from Sherry Kingsburg. Question 1. Use of 80005B for LAOs. Can anyone give guidance or should I reach out to CTC? When can we use it for what electives curriculum?
So there is some guidance on CTC's website. So if you go into the CalSASS, the Credential Information Guide, into local assignment options, there's a table in there. I'm trying to pull up the link. There we go. I found it. All right. I'm putting it into the chat here. And if you guys want to just, Gary, I don't know if you want to just bring it up. There you go. Local assignment options. So it does give specific information. There's the little carrots, and it tells you exactly what each of those local assignment options can be used for. So if you just click on one of those local assignment, there we go. There we go. See, it gives you all that information.
Okay, and then at the 3:40 timestamp, Brandy posted the email for PACE, and that's for the ELOP information, right? Sarah says, thank you, Brandy, for the email contact. Lou is talking with Sarah. I think Sarah's responding to Lou. So Anne, question 1, what is a stub? The Stub SINF record is what we call the initial record that gets created automatically by CALPADS, where it's just pulling in certain fields. It's not creating a complete SINF record, right? It's just specific fields that are included in the SDNR when you do your SID request. And so we call it a stub because it's just it's a short SINF record. It's not the complete record. Now, if anyone else has a better explanation, say no. Ethan has a comment, says, the reason SINF Stub records are problematic now does not, in my opinion, have anything to do with how SSID matching or SSID generation works now. SINF Stub records were created by CALPADS automatically in the old record, or in the old order too. It is problematic now because cert error logic was changed to trigger, for example, missing parent ed level errors on every SINF point in time record, not just the record that overlaps census date, which is how it used to be. For those hoping CALPADS stops creating these stub records automatically, I don't think it's going to happen. I recall Brandy comment along the lines of, if a student has a discipline incident on any date in the school year, we need to be able to tell if they were SED on that date. Thanks, Ethan. Mary from question 1, regarding question at 325. Can CALPADS put in a pop-up message reminding LEAs so LEA won't remove an SENR without removing the other records? Like a, are you sure you want to do this type of message? I don't know if we can do that.
Maybe to notify that they might be orphaning records if they delete it. That's probably what you said.
Mm-hmm.
That would be a definite change request, which I don't think at the current time we have the bandwidth for, but there was a time when you couldn't, if I remember correctly, you couldn't, the courses in Fall 2 data, the courses would restrict you removing an assignment or something like that. So it might be possible. We can always hope.
Change request.
So Mayor, if you want to put in a ticket and we can escalate and talk about it. Question 3 from Claudia, I wrote it down. Anne has a comment, says, is the information Alex just mentioned about removing the records from the bottom up before removing an SDNR record covered in the SSID anomalies training? If not, it should be added. And then Kyron has a shameless plug at 3:51. There is an anomalies management training tomorrow. There are still 3 spots available for registration, and there's the link.
Actually, someone took it already, but there's August, the next one, the Monday after.
Okay. And at 3:53, Brandy posted the link to the CALSASS local assignment options page. Cherise says, nice, Brandy, thank you. All right, so Deborah from School Pathways says, if I resolved a mid, it should show on the 9.2 resolved mid report. It should. It was just recently fixed. And that was just yesterday. So perhaps that's why you were not seeing your resolved mid, Deborah. But if you were to run it again, those result omits should be included in that report. Moving on to Larnie, right below that, question 2 says, on Flash 161, page 7, it states that the CDE will be posting a comprehensive scenarios table that will help LEAs determine for students in grade level categories of infant, pre-K, and K through 12 the following: District of Education Accountability, reporting LEA, enrollment status, and school of enrollment. Was this table released? If yes, where can I find it? Thank you.
Yeah, that's the reporting scenarios for students with disabilities. It's right below the link to Flash 161.
Mm-hmm. I believe it's also right at the bottom of there. Yeah, there we go. Reporting data for students with disabilities. And you can also find that in our user manual. And just as an FYI, when you open up that, that page, if you scroll all the way at the bottom of that page, you can download this scenarios in Excel. And it's, in my opinion, a much friendlier use because you can filter.
And save it.
Yeah, save it.
Download and save it.
It is 4 o'clock, folks. I'm going to keep going, but if you need to drop off, we understand. We're going to continue on with Cedric at 321, question 2. We request a monthly credential file from the CTC, but would like to get data on PIP, Provisional Internship Permit, and STIP, Substitute Teacher Incentive Plan. I was told by FICNAT support that they don't handle that. What entity could provide these data?
My understanding is that the commission tracks PIPs and STIPs. It's not, I mean, it's not, when you say they don't handle that. I'm not sure who you are referring to, but my understanding is that the commission, and Paula, is that your same understanding? The commission tracks STIPs and PIPs.
Correct.
Yeah, so I don't know.
Yeah, they tell us who has a STIP and PIP.
Right. It may not be in the credential file that you get, Cedric. So it may be something that your monitoring authority needs to ask for from CTC specifically.
And then we go to 324. And Janet says, question 2. We have a student that was classified as an EL student. However, primary language is wrong, so I now need to make the correction. I tried making the correction in CALPADS, but the correction is being rejected. How do I proceed? Is this done through STAIRS? It is done through STAIRS, but it's a series of STAIRS requests. Unless something's changed, Randy, is it still the same? Okay.
But what I will tell you is Alex is going to tell you how to do this, but please be patient because they have a lot of brand new agents that may tell you something different than we're telling you right now. If you have an issue, then you can just send in a ticket. But go ahead, Alex.
Okay. So series of steps. First is you want to make sure that the TBD record reflects the correct primary language. So CALPADS isn't going to let you just edit that primary language. You have to remove the TBD record, recreate it with the same status start date for that TBD, but just update it with the correct primary language. The second step is that you need to submit a reset STAIRS, and that would then have TOMS remove the EL record from CALPADS. Once that EL record is removed, you submit a second STAIRS request, and this is a restore STAIRS request. And the restore will send that EL record back, but with the primary language that you updated in CALPADS. So it would reflect the correct primary language.
And I will say though, however, that that process that she's talking about right now can only be done for tests that were administered in this academic year.
Mm-hmm.
Right. If it was administered in a prior academic year, then we're going to have to do a special data request through CALPADS to fix it. The other caveat that I wanted to point out there is when Alex says you have to delete the TBD record and then resubmit the TBD record, if for whatever reason this kid was tested during the summer, and you try and use that same date now, you're going to get a GR5 error because your enrollment was not open. We allow those things, the TBD records, to have an enrollment or a start date before your enrollment period only during certain months of the year. That's June, July, and August. So there, if you run into that issue where the TBD date falls outside of the enrollment period, send in a service ticket and I'll tell you exactly how to fix it. It's just a lot of steps.
I have this written down.
Unfortunately, I do. That would make a great FAQ. I do actually have it written down. Because I answer so many of these tickets. Yeah. So yes.
All right, moving on, 349, we have Catherine's question 2. Says, I am receiving a CCE error for a student that is enrolled both in our district and the special education school that the student is attending. Should one of these schools be listed as secondary enrollment, and would it be the home school or the reporting school? I guess my question is, where is the student receiving instruction?
They can only be primarily enrolled at one place.
So wherever the student is receiving the majority of their education, that would take the primary enrollment. And
Catherine, I would also argue that if the District of Special Education Accountability, which is generally the district of residence, if they're reporting that enrollment because they're claiming ADA for that student, that the ADA needs to be claimed by the district that's actually serving the student. So that the district of residence does not need to report an enrollment, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
And then the last question I had written down was at 350, and that was from Claudia. And question 3 says, I found out that last year I gave someone else's SSID. I contacted the other district and cleaned the data. I got on USSID for my student, but I was not able to add the SCSE records. Student is only in 1st grade.
Well, thank goodness.
So if you weren't able to add the SCSE records, I mean, if you put in a ticket, maybe we can help you out, figure out why. But because it's from last year, I don't think it's, it's not super high critical. So just submit a ticket and we'll try to get that record in there for you. And then with that, I think we're done unless someone had another question. Susan, question 2, can you please reshare the anomalies training again? And I think that was a link, right? At the 351 timestamp, there's a calendar for Bridge. And then people are guessing. River. Derek, question 1. For the early access to universal TK students, should we be reporting these students before they turn 5? If so, should we use grade level kinder? Should we send a CELA? When are they eligible for initial ELPAC?
So for if you're entering them in transitional kindergarten, even though they're not eligible for apportionment, Should you be enrolling them in CALPADS? Yes. Should you be reporting a TK record for them? Yes. Do you have to send a SELA record? Right now, as it stands, any student with a grade level of kindergarten and a primary language other than English needs to be assessed with the initial ELPAC. Now, having said that, there are conversations going on within the department to discuss whether or not it's appropriate to test kids that young. They have not made a decision yet, though. So
Right,
go ahead.
No, I'm just going to say there's some confusion because the assessment division sent out in one of their, I don't know, flash type things that only kids who are eligible for LCFF should be tested. And so that got a lot of folks confused. And
When
so
did
right
they send
now,
that out?
Oh, I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks ago. So that's caused all these questions from LEAs that we've been getting. And if you look at the data, you can see everyone is doing something different. Some are testing those kids and some aren't, and it's all very confused, which is why, you know, our legal team and our TK folks and our EL folks are all trying to figure out what to do, and they haven't yet. So we're kind of in limbo on it. But I think the main issue is that when they developed that initial ELPAC, it wasn't necessarily developed for kids who are that age. However, there's a difference in how they score the kindergarten ones to take into account the fact that they're not going to be reading or writing yet, right? So they use the scores they got on the speaking piece, like at 90% or something, but the federal government requires them also to use some information from the other domains. So that's why it's complicated, because they're getting into psychometrics and trying to figure out what's appropriate. Anyway, that's why I think it's taking a little longer for them to figure out what to do. And then from a legal standpoint, what do the federal government and what do our own state regulations say? Do they consider TK kids kindergarten kids? Because the regulations basically say you have to test them with initial 30 days from enrollment, but it doesn't really say, you know, if you're a TK kid, what does that include you? It doesn't say that in the regulation, so it's unclear. So it's probably more information than you needed, but that's why it's taking them a while to figure this out.
And then this is regarding students who turn 5 after the current year cutoff of February 2nd. So if the student turns 5 after February 2nd, should they still submit them with a grade level of kinder?
Yes.
And do,
Yes.
okay.
So, I mean, folks, the issue here is, number one, we don't have a grade level for transitional kindergarten. That is coming next year, 23-24. So right now, if a student is enrolled in your district in transitional kindergarten, there is a need at the state level to know the kids that are participating in transitional kindergarten, regardless of whether or not they are apportionment eligible. So if they're 4 years old and they're in TK, enroll them in CALPADS, create a transitional kindergarten record for them. However, they will not be eligible for ADA if their 5th birthday is after February 2nd until their 5th birthday. But yes, you should submit enrollments and you should submit TK records for them.
And it's our understanding that your fiscal folks kind of track that and know how to report that for ADA purposes, but we don't use CALPADS data in any way to determine ADA apportionment, except for LCFF unduplicated people count. But we don't, from an ADA perspective, CALPADS data is not used.
Question 3 from Janet says, is the mid report working? I have gone through our list of mids. However, when I choose the none option, it doesn't save this option. If I try reviewing the list the following day, I never know what students I've reviewed and where and we're part of the none. Any tips? I hope this makes sense.
I can take that one, Alex.
Thank you.
So none doesn't really do anything. It's the same as just closing out the modal without making any selections at all. So what you want to focus on are the combine and different. Combine means, yes, these are the same, this is the same student who has 2 SSIDs and I want to merge all their records. Different means no, these are indeed 2 different students, and that'll mark them as canceled, and so they won't be an active anomaly for you. Another tip is when you're on that screen, when you first get there, filter on mid ownership equal to the reporting LEA, and that will limit the list down to mids that you can act on. Otherwise, it includes, Gary's navigating there now. Otherwise, it includes all anomalies, including those that you have a student tangled up in a mid, but they're not ones you can work on. They belong to another LEA. So I have a change request in to default the disposition to ready and mid ownership filter to reporting LEA. We just haven't gotten to it yet, but I think I mentioned this on a call once before, but I would try to get in the habit of just making those selections when you come to your mid screen, and that just limits what you have to work on.
And then at 4:09, Kyron posted the training calendar again. So there's that for you to sign up for training. And then the last question is Anne's. Says, just to confirm, the U.S. School enter date is only required for students who have a CELA other than English only, or is it also for students who were born outside of the U.S.?
I think it's only for English learners.
Actually, it's just for ELs. They will be updating that part, and also the error list, I think, that involves that part.
Right. And the reason there's confusion is because initially, a long time ago, it was required for Title III eligible immigrants as well as English learners, but then we modified it so that it really only is required for students who are ELs.
All right. Well, that does it for this Q&A, folks. Thank you for coming. Thanks, Brandy, Paula, all my helpers today. And we'll see you next week.